Hello, good morning, everyone. And for those who are watching from different time zones, good afternoon or good evening. And of course, for the person that I will interview today, it's good evening for him. And I'm super excited because this is the first time that I'm gonna interview someone from Canada. So my name is Marilyn. For those who are seeing me for the first time, I'm the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited, or CTS, and we are passionate about helping leaders and organizations who are continuous learners and action takers to transform and thrive in all aspects by co-creating customized programs with our world-class resources. We have served over 3,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, and that includes Petronas, Sony Mobile, ProLife UK, Ayala Group, Chevron, Tencent, Jollibee Foods Corporation, and Shell, to name a few. Experts say that the pandemic will last for the next 3 to 5 years. And this is why we are organizing several interventions, including this interview, to help leaders who don't know how to stay relevant and adapt to the next normal, those who find it stressful to lead and ensure performance of a remote team, and for those who feel afraid that they can't help their team or keep their team and business during these interesting times. So, to be able to stay relevant and continue to lead effectively in any situation, feel free to join us in any of our interventions and other programs that we organize just for you. And today it's my great pleasure to introduce to you our leader, David Benjatschek. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. He is a speaker, coach, author, husband, and a father to two girls based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The vision behind the Building Capacity Leadership workshops he holds is to help leaders leverage the power of work environment to transform engagement, productivity, and result. And for the past 15 years, David's teachings have empowered tens of thousands of leaders around the globe. So without so much further ado, I'd like to bring in David.
Hi
Hi,
there,
David.
Marilyn. Good to
Good
see you.
evening to you.
Thank you for having me on. This is awesome.
Yes, it's my pleasure to have you. And again, I'm super excited because it's my first time to be interviewing someone from Canada, and I look forward to be learning from your culture and your background. And, um,
Calgary and Singapore are very connected. So I met my wife in my first wife. She passed away when she was 30, but she was from Singapore. And I met her. I was friends with her brother at the University of Calgary. And then she came to study. And so I've been to Singapore many times.
oh
And
wow.
you now have an invitation to come to Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Yes, yes, yes. So, just to give you a brief of what we're gonna talk about on leadership and transformation. Basically, I've actually organized it in such a way. The first three questions will give us more knowledge in terms of which perspective are you coming from.
Mhm.
The 4 to 6 questions would be, I would say, the juicy or meaty part of the conversation, and that's what they really have to, you know. Look forward to as well. And the 7 to 8 question will be very interesting questions, which I would normally say as the Miss Universe questions. so let's
I've
so
never entered the Miss Universe contest, so
yeah, so an opportunity for you now. So yet let's jump in right away.
let's do it.
So yeah, so please feel free to share with us your leadership experiences and influencers. If you do have a favorite leadership lifestyle style that you'd like to share with us,
Yeah.
feel free to do so as well.
Yeah, certainly, Marilyn. I just want to start by saying for leaders, there's often a question, are you born a leader or can you be made a leader? And in my particular case, I didn't take the normal route. I don't come from a family where there was a lot of examples of corporate
Mhm,
leaders. So my
mhm,
father was an immigrant to Canada from Europe after World War II. He came with the clothes on his back and a hard work ethic. And he was an awesome personal leader in terms of his character and his integrity and his hard work. But very much he was a servant. He cared about
mhm,
people and he gave. I remember when I took my first job with Shell Canada. So I was in oil and
mhm,
gas for 15 years. And he
mhm,
found out I got the job. He patted me on the shoulder and he said,
mhm.
"Son, do as you're told and you'll be fine." And that was his loving advice at that time. But I think that I want to say that if we see leadership qualities in others,
Mm-hmm.
that we have a duty to kind of share that with them and encourage that with them. And that's how I got into my leadership stream. And it started at university. When I went to university, I stayed in residence at the University of Calgary, where I studied
Mm-hmm.
economics and French. And really, when I went there, I was quite the shy boy. I was very, very shy. And I remember being almost intimidated my first day. And I heard the noise in the central lounge of students congregating. And I just made a choice that I need to go out there and engage.
Mm-hmm.
And after the first year, they were holding student elections for student government. And someone shocked me by coming up to me and saying, "Are you going to run?" And I had never considered that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to know that there are so many potential leaders out there that don't see themselves as leaders yet.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe someone like, for myself, his name was Lauren Williams, looked me in the eyes and said, "You can do this."
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. I won. And for the next 4 years, I was in student leadership at university, which really was an awesome foundation that led me into the corporate world. And so then my other leadership activities, when I was young and foolish, I was a retail manager for a retail brand in Canada. And
Mm-hmm.
I did some great things as a retail manager, and then 15 years in oil and gas. With Shell, and so an international organization well known in Singapore,
Mm-hmm.
and I had leadership roles in inside sales, in customer service, and lastly, I was a marketing manager. And so those roles were awesome. When I left Shell, I left to teach. So one of the
Wow.
best things about my experiences at Shell, it taught me where I succeeded and where I failed, and I learned from both. I think that's important for leaders. And it started a contract position with Rockhurst University out of Kansas City in the US. Traveled the world, Puerto Rico, and various places, North America throughout. And for the last 5 years, I've been on my own with building capacity leadership workshops, training leaders, and so it's been an exciting ride. In terms of leadership examples, I give you two, and for very different reasons. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the first one is a very unusual character and a very complex personality, but I love Elon Musk. And not necessarily that I would hang out with him because he is a very complex personality, but I love the fact that he dares to dream. And I think having vision, uncommon vision, and daring to dream is an important trait for any leader.
Mm-hmm.
And whether they aspire to leadership or whether they have other potentials, I think that leaders need to open up that vision for their employees as well. Because many employees don't see themselves in certain roles. And much like Elon Musk does corporately for his company, it's important for leaders to help people get glimpses of what else is possible with their career, with their lives. There's a phrase that says, "If you can see it, you can achieve it." It's so important. And so I think every industry needs an Elon Musk, someone who's willing to just push the boundaries of what's possible. And the second is someone that probably none of your listeners will recognize because he was a gentleman at Shell, and his name was Dominic Rapazzo. And he just demonstrated in leadership the importance of building community and the importance of building relationship. There's a phrase that we use that it still is who you know. And I just remember working with him in sales and in corporate sales. We would win business that we had no right winning, simply because he had an attitude that said, "I'm going to involve you in my activities. I'm going to be passionately curious about who you are, what your interests are, and where I can involve you in those interests, even if it isn't directly related to what we do in business, but it may be an interest in opera." And he had seasons tickets, and so we bring them along, or an interest in sports. And if he could, hook them up with tickets, he would do that. And he would also connect people with each other, even if he wasn't involved. And he would say, "You know what, John, you need to meet Susan because you both have an avid interest in this." The community that he built, more so than any personal excellence, more so than our corporate brand, was powerful at making him a President's Club member for many years at Shell. And it was that community and that relationship that allowed him to shine. And so, two very different examples, but for me, those are important examples for leaders.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that experience. I mean, you started young in school,
Yeah,
and I'm really glad that you've actually shared the experience or your influencers in terms of leadership, like Elon Musk, which is more towards the vision, and daring to dream, and at the same time your Dominic, which is your ex boss that I mean ex leader that you work with, where
yes.
you got inspired because of how he actually connects people, bridge people, and create those communities. And again, that's what I'm actually aiming for as well, to build communities that will eventually evolve and help each other, right? Because it's for me, I really believe a lot on leverage as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, you cannot really experience everything on your own, and but you can do that through the experience of others, and that's the reason why I also do this interview, David.
Well,
So
can I say this, Marilyn, because it's an
yes,
excellent
go
point, and
ahead.
even with cultural differences, and I
Mhm.
think actually for Singapore, that's probably one of more of your strengths as compared to Canada. In North America, and there's a part of this that is excellent that I love. There's an attitude of personal achievement, and doing your best and being your best, and all of those things are great things until someone starts to believe that personal achievement is all up to themselves and takes that entire burden on themselves to do. I'm very famous for saying that personal achievement is best achieved in community. And
Yes.
so I love what you're doing. And, I
Okay.
continue on. Yeah.
And you've shared some of the like Elon Musk and Dominic as your like leaders of influence. So that leads me to my next question then. What is leadership for you?
Yes. And this is very specific towards my bent on what I teach, because you could give
Mhm.
many definitions. But for me, a great leadership is controlling what you control to influence what you don't towards a meaningful goal. So controlling what you control and towards influencing what you don't, with the aim at a meaningful goal, something that is meaningful. And I say that because I believe there are three players. Leadership can be very complex emotionally, and it is, but it's also very
Yes.
simple. To me, there are three players in the game of performance and in the game of relationship. So for you and I to consider ourselves, the first player is us, you. And then the second player is them, the people around you, your coworkers, your customers, your clients, your family, your friends, your arch enemies, all of those people. And then there's the environment, which can be a physical environment of working from home or working in an office, but it can be culture, it can be values, it can be a number of things. And I like to remind people that the person that they control the least, especially for leaders, but this is for personal leadership too. This is relationship stuff. The person you control the least, the player you control the least, is them. And as leaders, you're going to get burned if you try.
I agree with you on that.
And so I think great leadership controls what you can, which is ourselves to some extent, and the environment we create, which is why I love offering leaders a blueprint to building environments that influence behavior. So, Marilyn, your behaviors today are very much influenced by your past. And so, whether it's your culture, your faith, your schooling, your work experiences, your successes, any failures, any traumatic experiences, they have all brought you to today where you will automatically act in a certain way in any given situation based on what you have learned is the right thing to do. So my point to leaders is this, is that if our past environments molded our behaviors today, if we just have the audacity to see something different 2 to 3 to 4 years down the road, then instead of trying to change people, the environment you build today will be your biggest friend and have the biggest influence in realizing that behavioral change, because environments are powerful. And I'll make this one last point because we're both teachers. The reason I developed my own curriculum and the reason I'm passionate about the environment is because, for example, in teaching across North America, there are many workshops where, like you'll get students that are high-fiving you, and it's like, thank you, David. And I know these 1, 2, 3 things that need to change. And for so many of them, I would connect with them 2 months later and ask them what really changed. And so often the answer was nothing. And I recognized the power of the environment they went back to either inspire their inspiration and have it turn into meaningful change, or to immediately almost squash it and kill it. And so thus my passion for helping leaders build environments that influence behavior in people.
Exactly. And I mean, like, I'm glad that you reminded every one of us that, just do control things or people that, like yourself, that are within your control. And, again, leadership is about influencing, like what you've shared, right? I mean, because you can't control everybody but yourself. And so the aim is really to be able to influence other, your environment, or create that, even creating that environment, as you mentioned, through the
Yes.
community, through leveraging on strengths and working on things that you can improve to get towards that vision, that goal that you have, right? And
Yes.
again, I believe that's one of the challenges that most people have, is that, I would admittedly say that I'm kind of control freak myself. So
You've let me talk, so it's all good.
right, so I'm kind of like, oh, I want to control this, I want to change this person and whatnot. So, and it's me that gets hurt when, that doesn't happen. And again, like what you've said, it's all about controlling yourself and what you can, and, influencing those around you, your environment. And again, our environment really creates also that change or result, not only within us, but in how we leverage, or how we, like, succeed in whatever we do, right? Because
Yes.
the environment will definitely have an impact in terms of
Huge.
how we
Huge.
would respond, and how we do a lot of things, and how we will succeed, right? So it's about creating that environment for us to, like, to also have our highest potential, I would say, right?
Yeah. And
So
that
that's,
environment includes culture, it includes vision, it
yeah.
includes clear expectation and consequences. It includes a number of things that are so important, and that as leaders have a little bit more control over that than they
Mhm.
do other people, that is your most powerful avenue to start to create the culture and the results that you're looking for.
Yes, and interesting because, like what we both mentioned, environment really, like, have a huge impact in terms of the changes that will, and the successes that you will have. So, and I remember, I can't remember his name, but then it's a Japanese guy who studied about this snowflakes, right? And when you feed it with good things, like affirmations, or the beautiful words, and positive things, then it becomes more beautiful. But then when you actually say bad words or bad things about the snowflakes, it becomes like blur, or the image
Yes.
becomes like
Yeah.
also unlikely, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what we mean by environment, like even feeding yourself with positive things, right?
Yeah, and so here are 3 positive relationships. It's not part of the formal questions, but while we're on this topic, because it's so good, for your listeners, 3 positive relationships that I think every one of us needs in place, that will help create an environment that will help us walk through our fears, walk through our
Mhm.
limitations towards the potential that we have.
Mhm.
The number one is we all need someone around us that's an idea person,
Mhm.
and that has vision. You see, so often people give up because they think they see a destination, but they feel like they're not getting there and they
Mhm.
can't get there. I to me, don't give up yourself. Just talk to someone who's already been there. Hang out with someone who's already been there because they've been down that path and they've seen what it takes. And you just need to put on their glasses for a little bit and connect with them. And so, a very vivid example, very quickly, about a month and a half ago, I had a friend of mine and his wife come over for dinner. And he was, I love this term, passionately curious. When you truly just take an interest in someone, that's genuine. And after dinner, we got talking, and he asked me about some of the leadership stuff that he was doing. And then he asked me about the other side of me, which is also, I love professional photography. I'm a photographer.
Oh, wow.
And in the past 15 years, you see, I think we all have always something more to discover about who we are. I don't think that there's a cap on that question. So I've struggled telling people that I do those two things. I'm a leadership coach and I'm a photographer, because I tend to get that look as like, okay, can you choose? And if I'm looking for a leadership coach, if you're a photographer and you're really creative, are you going to give me the meat and potatoes that I need to really make a difference with my team? And if I'm looking for a photographer and you're a leadership coach, do you really have the creativity to shoot the biggest day of my life and give me beautiful photos? And you would see that. And I struggled to put them together. And one conversation with one person who saw something different than I, and he said, Dave, do you have companies that struggle with recruitment and retention? I go, yes. And actually, that's a very common theme in North America. COVID has made it much worse with the severe deficiency in the workforce. But he said, I see you going into a company and photographing their story and getting their story and interviewing people and finding out their authenticity. And from that, driving corporate strategies and environments. Because if we're not based on who we are, on our authenticity, it's not a great place to be. And it was like,
it blew your mind.
Yeah. For your viewers, if you feel frustrated in one particular area of your life, you are one connection away from removing the wall that's currently a barrier for you. It is not a personal failure. It's an environmental failure. You just need to add that piece. And so the first relationship is we all need that idea person. And the second relationship is we all need the listener, someone that we can just be ourselves. We can admit our fears to. We can cry, yell, scream, swear occasionally, and do all of those things that just accept us and love us for who we are. And they're important because they allow us to vent. And sometimes that's all that we need. We don't need to solve some of our problems. We just let go of some steam. The third piece is an accountability partner. Motivation for me is want to plus have to. And it's one of my passions in life. So many people, I know that they want the dreams that are in their heart. But when you ask them how far they are along the path, it is not very far at all, because they've never had anyone going, where's your plan? Are you done this yet? Is this done? Is this done? In our workplaces, for our corporate careers, we have the benefit of a boss and a manager and a leader, and they come to us on a regular basis, and there's deadlines and there's all of those things. And you know what? It works, because for some of us, we're motivated by deadlines. I am.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, we're supposed to be on the part where we wanted to understand your perspective, and you're giving us a lot of meaty things already at the start of this conversation. Thank you so much for that. And again, I believe as well in what you've said about being authentic. I mean, that's where we will be in our highest potential when
Yes.
we are being authentic about ourselves.
Yeah.
But you've also mentioned about, there's a lot of negativity in this world. And even during my introduction, where, there were quite a number of challenges, I would say, due to the COVID-19.
Yes.
And so that leads me to my next questions. If you were to define or describe the next normal, what would it be?
Well, there's two words that came, and I must confess, I'm not a predictor per se. That's not my specialty. But there are two things that I really see, and the word is community,
Mm-hmm.
and the other word is gig.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to talk about those two things as I see that those trends emerging. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, community. It's amazing how COVID, in its onset, the perceived a consequence of COVID was a loss of community. And because people were confined to their homes or confined to their bubbles and confined to working out of their homes. And if you bought into that, you may have lost out. So what I found is that yes, I couldn't go visit people and shake their hands, and I couldn't go get on an airplane and go to places and do those things. But that change of environment forced me to do something I wasn't really good at doing or hadn't focused on, and that is connecting online.
Yes.
And I can honestly say that number one, I have connected with more people during this COVID period in a meaningful way than I had connected when I had the ability to travel the world and go and shake hands. It's
Wow.
actually bumped up that connectivity. And I see that connectivity is happening. And it is meaningful because we seem to have a common enemy. And so it's amazing when you have a common enemy, which is this pandemic. It's amazing how it's tying communities together in a very meaningful way because trauma does that. And I believe mental health is it's certainly a real issue in Canada. And I can
Mhm.
imagine it would be a real issue in Singapore.
I believe it's an issue everywhere, trauma and
Yeah,
like because again, like what you've mentioned, the connection was like, there's a hindrance for us to be able to travel, see and hug our friends, our loved ones,
yeah,
from other countries. Like for me, I live in Philippines. I've never been to Philippines for the last 2 years, right?
right.
So I mean that feeling of I wanted to be connected. In fact, I've been to a lot of platforms just because of this. I have lunch club, I have clubhouse, I have
Nice.
all those communities, and I've even created masterminds just to see like how else can we continue to serve others
Yeah.
despite the situation, right? So I experimented a lot of things, and this interview, I mean, this is always out of my comfort zone, but I'm doing it anyway just to be able to hopefully inspire at least one person who will be watching this, right?
Okay, and you're doing an awesome job, and I love your inquisitiveness with your guests and your ability to ask questions. I want to make this point, what you said, because it's so valid, that it's something that you're not totally comfortable with. And I was training a group last week live, which is so nice to be in a room with people.
Yes.
Um, but it came through the discussion, and it came to this point, and it's absolutely true in my life, and I'll get your opinion on it. Uh,
Mhm.
your greatest reward as a person, it's not just you, but everyone listening, your greatest reward tends to be actually walking towards and through your greatest fear instead of running away from it.
Exactly.
And the only way that you can walk towards that fear and continue a successful walk to it and through it is with community, with that support of that listener, that idea person, that accountability person. They help me push myself through my fears to a place where on the other side of that fear is potential, is promise,
Yes.
is just it's paradise. And we just have to have the courage, the consistency, and the commitment to get there.
That's I really love what you've said about getting out of that fear, because there's like so much amazing things behind that fear, which is potential and promise, like what you said. I mean, like I mentioned to you, I'm not really that person who will be very comfortable in doing this. Why did I say that? Because normally I'm always behind the scene, organizing all this thing, creating visibility for my resources, for my experts, and I was the one who's always behind organizing all of this. But now that, oh, I cannot go to my client anymore to visit them like I used to do,
Yeah,
and that's the reason why, what can I do to reach out to them and to continue to add value? So, and this is what I've actually thought of. I mean, I am learning from leaders like you, and at the same time,
yeah,
I'm sure there will be like, people listening or watching us that will be inspired in, what we are discussing right now. So I said like, okay, never mind the fear, never mind the discomfort. I'll just do it.
There was a commercial way back. I'm aging myself. That it was for a deodorant, and the tagline was "Never let them see you sweat." And if you have fear, I've never seen you sweat. So you do very well at talking through it, and it's awesome.
Thank you. So, yeah, so let's go to the meaty part. I mean, you've mentioned about the challenges as well, in your part of the world where you've mentioned about retention. So, I'm sure this problems are not only limited to where you are or to the leaders that you work with, but for sure, even before COVID-19, there are some problems that, you have gone through while you were a corporate leader and now that you're working with corporate leaders. So, what if you were to name just the top three problems that they normally face, what would it be?
Okay. So thank you for that question. Here are my three: identity,
Mm-hmm.
certainty, and community. So identity, certainty, and community. Identity, knowing who you are, or being on a path towards fully discovering who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the issue, and we've kind of touched on it already in the power of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Every authenticity has every organization has an authenticity in terms of its culture. And that will appeal to certain customers and not appeal to others. It'll appeal to certain employees and not
Mm-hmm.
appeal to others. My big thing is shout out so loudly who you are that your fans find you and your haters stay away. And so, from a sales perspective, it means that you don't spend money trying to get customers that were not meant to be yours and that will be a high cost of serving because they're never satisfied. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and from an employee perspective, it's like, don't be ashamed of your culture. I know that your company's not perfect. Can you just begin to describe in several ways what it is so that people that do appreciate it, because we all appreciate different things in this wonderful wide world of diversity, they find you. And when they come and they get what they expected, they're happy. And it's so good. And there is an event out in Banff. One of my friends, Ryan Gill, he's an up and coming world leader, and it's called The Gathering. And they bring in the biggest marketing brands. And Airbnb came. And what I loved about how they defined their identity is they didn't do it from the boardroom down. They went out to their hosts, so their places that were listed on Airbnb, and they asked them to describe who they were and what they were, and looked for commonalities. And then they went to their employees, and they asked them to describe who they felt that they were, and that's how they developed their identity. That's how they marketed to customers, and I forget the exact line. It's something like "Oh, home away from home," or their tagline had to do with having a home away from home, and that was what people felt. That's what employees felt. That's what the people who rented out their places felt they were giving to someone else. And because it was authentic, it stuck, and a huge success story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you don't do that, the danger is you try to be someone you're not, or you try to be someone, or you try to be everything to everyone, and neither of those paths is a great success path. So I think every leader should spend some time with their teams and with their clients, truly understanding who am I, because that'll better define your customer base from a sales and revenue perspective, and it's going to really help recruiting and retention
Mm-hmm.
on that side. And so then certainty, it's certainty in our lives on a personal basis gives us focus. It gives us peace. It gives us confidence. It gives us energy. And on a corporate basis, there was a research study done about 10 years ago, but I believe it would still be relevant because I don't think we've changed that much as humans.
Mm-hmm.
But it said that 9 out of 10 times non-performance in a company has nothing to do with the person not being able to do the job. It had nothing to do with their aptitude. It had everything to do with fully and completely understanding what was asked of them.
Wow. Okay.
And so for leaders, that's huge. And so when we talk about leaders, in Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants of where you spend your day, and quadrant number 1 being urgent and important, that can burn you out. And urgency, emotional urgency, happens when you don't get what you expect. And so I spend a lot of time coaching leaders on setting expectations with clarity. Because when people are certain what they can do each day, there's a focus and an energy, like I said, that comes about that is going to quadruple your results. Not just increase your results slightly, it's exponentially. When certainty is in place, good things happen. When we are uncertain, it affects relationships, it affects productivity, and it is preventable. So it's another passion of mine. And then community. So, in a lot of organizations, I find the environment to be this, that at the ground level, they will look at the management level above them, and they will wait for them to come up with programs to solve some of the issues at their level. And a part of that is that level's job. But there are so many cases and areas where I find that if they just acted as a community, they wouldn't need a program from above. So let me give you this example for the listeners to kind of make it a little bit more relevant. Last week, we talked about the power of community, and I asked them for stories about where community rallied. And they saw community pitch in and help. And there were a number of stories, whether people lost their homes to a fire, or there were floods in an area, or people where health was taken away, and so their finances, income stream was taken away, and they were in dire circumstances. When the community comes in, usually, here's the thing, with government, if government intervenes, if that next level of leadership has to come in, it requires a budget. It requires discussion and approval. It requires time. It requires bureaucracy. And usually our taxes go up. When community gets involved, I mean, the stories were incredible where these people would just bring of what they had. The resources were already there. It built relationships, because when you come together to help someone, there's no feeling like it. It builds team. And so we were passionate last week about exploring for some of the things they were getting frustrated waiting for from upper leadership, where community with existing resources could actually come in and rally and actually connect and build these tight weaves between the communities within the organization. And so identity, certainty, community, they're a big part of what I love to coach.
Wow, that's amazing how you've actually simplified this top three problems for us. And it's easier to remember, identity, certainty, community, which I've also flashed in the summary. And it's amazing, this is a lot to do with knowing who you are first,
Yeah, yeah,
and being able to to spread your authenticity, your talent, your passion, your purpose out there, right?
yes,
Through the community, like what you've mentioned,
yes,
being able to, like, share and work together with already what you have, right? And
yes.
it's that simple, and yet, leaders are actually facing all these challenges up until this time, right? So
Yes.
hopefully, like, more leaders can hear this message from you.
And I'm going
And
to give you just one quick on top of that, just
mhm,
to wind that up. And I love what you're saying, is that, the solution for that upper level of management is to let this layer below see that there is another possibility, and empower them to build a
yes,
community and to do those things. I,
exactly.
I say this to leaders, if you're listening, and maybe you think that, you're not creative, and your organization's strength is not innovation, and expanded vision. That's not your strength. I don't think you have to be born creative. I think that expanding vision and becoming increasingly innovative is simply a choice for leadership to intentionally expose their people to new things on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hang out with new things, you start to just click in terms of what's possible for you. And so if someone's listening and you're in a rut, you need an environment where you intentionally expose yourself on a regular basis to new things, and your life is going to get a lot more exciting. I promise you.
Yes, true, true. And again, like what you've said, it's about being vulnerable,
Yeah.
being authentic within the organization. And after all, leadership is really about empowering people and influencing them, inspiring them to be, to live their potential, right? So,
Yes.
and that's why leaders are important, right? Because they really create this environment, this they are the one who really like move people, move a lot of things to happen, right? they
Yes.
they are the one who would give that direction in the first place. And I remember the same thing that you mentioned about being clear um with their expectations, or
Yeah.
just giving the tangible things. I remember this from an interview with the group COO of Air Asia, and he said like what he does is that he would clearly give the instruction or ask what are the three tangible things that I expect from you. So
Yes.
all, and that actually came out into my mind when you've mentioned about this clarity in the expectation, so that your team will know what to do actually, right?
Yeah. Tell people what they can do. And in a changing world, sometimes that's not on a daily basis what they had planned to do. But if they're clear on a regular basis what they can do, even in the midst of chaos that they
Mm-hmm,
don't control because they didn't cause it, it was a global thing or a regional thing, or
mm-hmm,
something that happened. When people know they did what they could, you can go home and be a good husband, a good wife, a good father, a good mother, because you can be present with your family. When you go home guilty and you're uncertain whether you did what you could or what they wanted, it affects every part of your life. And so
mm-hmm.
leaders have an immense opportunity to be heroes in people's lives.
Yes, you've actually shared with us like how to address some of these problems while you're going through it. But I just wanted to discuss a little bit more on what would you believe then would be the leadership capabilities or skills that you must have in this next normal to continue to lead effectively.
Yeah, I think as so much is changing, I think the number one skill is questions, asking questions. It is so counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you're going to discover what's around the corner with this pace of change and technology changing and driving so much change around us,
Mm-hmm.
it's good to engage your community in terms of what they see. And the only way we do that is through questions. And I'll give you this one example. A lot of times on performance reviews, a manager or a leader will be with their employee, and they'll have their laptop and they'll show them their results and say, "This was what is expected. Here's what I see that you did." And you get an A+, Marilyn. Congratulations, and a 2% bonus at the end of the year. And David, you failed, and you get an F on your test, and that's what you do. You're losing out. You're losing out. And then at the end of all of that, you ask if they have any questions, but that environment is so intense and so pressurized that they're not going to ask you the questions or voice any dissent that they might have had. A leader does this. He gives them the laptop and says, "Tell me how you think you did. How did you do?" And listen to them as they walk you through. what they did compared to what they were supposed to do. And that's where you're going to get insights and data around where your teams are really at. And you should celebrate it with people. You're going to find out their uncertainties, their misperceptions, their misconceptions, that all of those things would have been hidden had you just talked at them. A friend of mine, Randy Johnson, he's a psychologist. He wrote the book, Could Questions Be the Answer? And it just released last year. And absolutely. So another question that is I think, an amazing question to ask. You don't control anyone. When you're passionately curious about someone, they may not be doing what you want them to do as your employee, but they may be resistant and stubborn. And so my encouragement is just ask what they think and listen, and then ask this question: how's that working for you?
Wow,
And then
that's
all
great.
of a sudden, they have to respond to that and admit that it's not. And when they come to that realization, then all of a sudden, great developmental conversations and plans can take place. Tell someone they need help, and you're in for a fight. And so I think the number one skill for leaders in the coming period, especially with uncertainty, is asking questions. And the number two is community building. So much like Dominic did earlier, as you see common interests, link people inside your organization, outside your organization, customers, because it's a small world now. We've got this global framework. We can have this conversation across from Singapore to Calgary, and it's easy. And those relationships will do more for you long term than you could ever realize. And actually, number three, I will add a third one as I was just talking. We chatted about last week. My question to the leaders was this: do you view every relationship as long term or short term?
Mm.
And for these leaders, they had a lot of seasonal workers, and which meant that they worked for them in the summer and then they would leave to go back to school or leave to go back wherever. And I said, a long term view of a relationship is being passionately curious about who they are, even though they may only spend 3 months with you,
Mm-hmm.
because you never know down the road where, when, how that taking an interest will pay off. And we have a personal example. A friend of ours, she is she's now in her 60s. She has a son, and in Singapore, I would imagine it's the same as it is in Canada. For a group of friends, there's always that one house they go to. Well, that was her house. So her boy brought his friends to their house, and especially for this one boy, she was his confidant. He was struggling with finding who he was, listened really well, took an interest. Fast forward 4 decades, lost touch, went off, did his thing, education, career, really hadn't touched base a whole lot. 2 years ago, she had a diagnosis of a tumor on her brain, and the symptom was losing her eyesight. And when she went into our local hospital to have some testing done, her doctor had arranged for testing. She walked out of the testing room and started walking down the hallway. And lo and behold, who walks the other way but this teenager, now a grown man? And he was the head of specialty at that hospital. And he was like, Hope, how are you? And hugged her. And what's going on? And why are you here? And all of a sudden she explained. And he says, Well, who have they got you? Who's your team? And so she showed him, and he said, That's the wrong team. Give me one day. And she got the help that she needed. When we take a long term view to relationships, corporately and personally, by being passionately interested in people, you never know when, you never know how. For the company that I trained last week, it was true that 10 years later, someone who had a great experience as a seasonal employee donated $1 million to one of their causes because that relationship was there.
Wow, that's really powerful. And in fact, David, if I may say, it's something similar to what I do right now. I've mentioned to you that I've been networking, and I've been leveraging on my experts. And that's how I actually like how my business model works. I mean, like, I leverage on experts like you and others from around the globe, and like I would just be interested and curious to know about them, what they can deliver, how can they help my customers as well.
Yes.
And once the need is there, like my mind starts to like while my clients are actually describing their problems, their challenges, their, what they need and what they wanted for,
Yeah.
and then like my mind works like something like AI, and it's like thinking about like, this person is perfect for them. So that's how I actually work. And I mean, like, I'm so blessed that I'm very, interested and very passionate and curious to learning from different types of people. That actually gives me an opportunity to like learn more.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. It's you are a community builder. And
Mhm.
so congratulations. It's the most powerful thing we can do. And
Yes.
when we help people succeed, they will raise us up farther than we could have ever gone before.
True, true. And somebody actually asked me like, how do you get all these people do this for you, and those kind of things. I said like, I have relationship with them.
Yeah.
When they need me, I was there for them. When now that they know that I need them, then they're here. I mean, like, I had like some projects where like I have speakers who are, getting paid like expensively or I mean on the high side. But then like when I asked, can you help me run this talk for this client, and then like, but this is the only budget they have, and then they said yes, and it's like, wow. I'm giving them like, those caliber of speakers, and that is because I have relationship with those speakers
That's great.
that I
Yeah.
have.
It opens up
So
the world.
true, true, true. And so, I mean, we've been talking about a lot on leadership, most especially.
Mhm.
But I guess we can focus more on the two things. Because I'll be asking you on what we believe will be the role of learning, leadership, and transformation in order to thrive, in this next normal. Maybe you can touch more on the learning and transformation side, because we've talked a lot about leadership.
You bet.
In our last conversations, I mean,
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, really, with with where we're going and the pace of change and just the magnitude of change. I mean, when I hear Mark Zuckerberg talk about the metaverse and sending you my hologram into your living room space behind you, and being able to feel your handshake from Calgary, Alberta, it's like, okay, I don't fully comprehend that. Um, but um, but you know what? There's two things. I think learning needs to be based more on authenticity. So we tend to have one program fits all, and I'll speak for Canada on that perspective. I know that education is super important to
Mhm,
Singaporeans.
mhm.
And it's a big part of your value system, even more so than it is in Canada. Education for a Singaporean family is like football to a Texas family. It is everything, right? And so I'm a big fan for the need for change in our educational system, where they start to recognize some strengths and weaknesses in our children and allow them to explore in each of those areas to grow their strengths, manage their weaknesses, and fully develop who they can become. And I believe in organizations that is a good philosophy as well, where people are used for who they are. See, the essence of community is you give where each member gives where they can. And if you use that metaphor, every one of your employees has strengths and weaknesses, and you should grow the strength and manage the weakness. And that means that your learning process will ask them to grow their strengths, to maybe then even coach and teach other people from that place. And yes, manage their weakness. But it should also be experiential. So in Canada, I find if I had to do my education over again, I would love to do what I call a co-op. And that is where you spend some time in the classroom and then you get paired with a company and you get some real life experience. I spent 4 years in a classroom. And to be honest, while I memorized the materials that I needed to memorize to do well on a test, I didn't have a full appreciation of their true implications. And there's a big part of me that was always jealous about the 50-some-year-olds that came back to university just for the fun of studying, because they had all that experience and they could apply it and truly grow. And so I think in this new age, I think experiential learning, really focused on people's strengths,
Mhm.
I think is going to be important.
Yes, true, true. And I mean, at least we're so blessed that we already have a lot of assessment tools, or even like, materials from everywhere that would help us identify our strengths, and,
Yeah,
might as well leverage on that. And it's interesting that you've also mentioned about the need to change in the educational system, because I think that's common to any like part of the world where they all the exams. I mean, it's kind of common here in Singapore, where as early as I don't know, 2 years old, they go to school or they go
yeah.
to tuition. It's like, wow, that's crazy, right? I
I
mean,
told I told my family in Singapore, it's like in Canada, like you cannot outstudy a child from Singapore. Like they just like it's like super important, super structured, and there are benefits to that. The knowledge that they gain through that structure is super beneficial.
mhm,
Each culture has its pluses and minuses. In Canada, we're a lot less structured, and so that the knowledge piece is maybe not as strong, but that environment encourages innovation because they're forced to innovate and they're forced to become more independent in terms of their learning style. And so both systems produce good things, and we can learn from each other. So
exactly. And it's interesting. I actually have like a conversation with someone who's just started his business on, a new education system, I would say, which are more about, I mean, you've mentioned about collaboration, experiential, strength based, right? And that's what they're trying to do with their business. It's for young children as well, because like what he noticed, that like a lot of children are so stressed with the examinations and the scores or whatnot, and yet we are all different. We have different passion. We have different strengths, and we do have different purpose in this world, right?
yes,
And again, that comes back to what you've mentioned earlier when it comes to authenticity, right? When we are not being authentic about ourselves, our strengths, and what we can do and what we are for in this world, right?
yeah,
It's more difficult. I mean, that what brings us chaos in this world, to be exact, I would say.
yes. No, I definitely agree.
Unfortunate truth, right? So, but anyway, so thank you so much for sharing with us, like, the education system that will be helpful, not only in Canada or in Singapore, but globally. It's all about, like, even in the corporate world, that's what I'm trying to really build, is really having that community too. Because collaborative learning, experiential learning is, different, and being able to leverage to everyone's strength is really powerful. It's gonna be amazing, I would say. But this
Yeah,
is something that I'm still about to build.
yeah. No, I
So
love
watch
it.
out for that.
Yes, I'm cheering you on.
So that that I would like, let's move to like, I would say this is a very open question, but I
Yeah,
mean, like, if we have this, I would say that we could probably make more amazing world or amazing people in this world, right? So
yes.
if you have a magic wand and can use it, what will you do with it?
Woohoo! It's gonna seem like a soft answer,
Mm-hmm.
but it's powerful. Um, I would I would actually wave it at people's hearts,
Mm-hmm.
and I would let them know that they're loved, and that they're valued and they have value. Self-esteem is one of the biggest cancers, not only in personal lives, or a lack of self-esteem, a low self-esteem is one of the biggest cancers, but in corporations as well. Because when people, and leaders don't control that, usually a low self-esteem comes from a
Mm-hmm.
lot of other environmental influences far before they even met them, but they play an active role in how they behave on a
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day basis, and they put a cap on their perceived capacity of themselves, and thus their real capacity. As humans, we're imperfect at expressing love, and I try to do my best. I'm not perfect at it as a human being. Faith plays a huge role for a lot of people in that realm. When you know that you're loved by the creator of the universe, and it's okay, you have value, um, that gives focus to our life's endeavors. That gives a purpose to our life's endeavors. That gives us courage to walk through things that we couldn't have courage before. I think the greatest need of anyone on the face of this earth is to be loved.
Definitely.
So if I had a magic wand, that's what I would do. I would let them know that they're loved.
Wow, that's lovely. I really hope that you have a magic wand. But I mean, at least from the work that you do in inspiring more leaders, helping more leaders, I mean, from that alone, the work that you do would definitely um, remind them of this, that how important these values love is in in
Yep.
everything that you do. And it's great to hear this from you, because later on I'll be talking in Clubhouse about how love and respect is important in leadership, which I haven't thought about yet. That's gonna be later today. So at least I got an inspiration from you, so thank you so much for that.
I'll hand you through the screen. Maybe Mark and Zuckerberg can help me give you this magic wand into your metaverse. And
Yes, in the future, why not, right? Where we can actually transfer things from from one place to another. I hope that happens.
amazing. And it started with the vision, even of fictitious television programs. We started
Mhm.
picturing it, visioning it, even if we thought it was like not possible. But when you can see something, watch out. You
Yes,
start to believe it, and that drives actions to help making it real.
right, right. That's amazing, and keeps us hopeful, I would say.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that leads me to my last question, final question for you, although I'm enjoying our conversation.
Yeah.
So, if you were to ask yourself a question that you can best answer, what would it be?
Um, well, I came up with two. This is a really good one, and it had me kind of think. My initial answer we've talked a lot about. It's like, who am I? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm still discovering that. And so that's the existential question and the power of authenticity. But the next question, since we've covered that a lot, is what do I need to understand? And in any situation, I think it's very helpful from a personal leadership point of view and from a corporate leadership point of view to approach any situation, any relationship with the knowledge that you don't know everything.
Yes.
And
And mhm.
no, and that questions are the key to unlocking what you don't know. And best decisions are made with the most knowledge. And so just having that mindset, what do I need to understand? They may be offensive to you in terms of the person you're interacting with. You may not like what's happening, but what do I need to understand that will help me turn the situation around?
Wow, that's really powerful. Thank you so much. I love these questions, and I appreciate you, giving a hint as well on why is this important and how can we actually somehow, help ourselves answer these questions. So thank you so much for that, David. I'm really grateful for this conversation that we have today.
So am I.
Yeah, so if you have any last message for our viewers or for our listeners, feel free to let us know if there's any other message that you'd like to share with them.
Oh, I just want to remind my core message. It's not your perfection. So, you know what, if you failed in your life, and whether it's in
Mhm.
school or in a job or in a particular position, it's not a condemnation. It's not living your dreams.
Mhm.
It's your position. And so, those three key relationships to place around you, and maybe take an inventory. Do I have an idea person? Do I have an accountability person? Do I have a listening person. When those people are in place around us, we're going to go places, and it's going to get exciting. We're going to see more develop. There, I believe for each of your listeners, there is potential inside of you that you don't even see yet, and you need the right environment to bring out of you. And so it's not on your shoulders. Wipe it off your shoulders. You know, and surround yourself in the environment that's going to help you propel and you know, live without your heart and live your dreams. So it's not your perfection; it's your position that's going to determine your potential, and I believe that to be true.
Wow, thank you so much for that message, David. And thank you so much for this, I would say, very powerful and authentic conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I also thank those who are watching us or who's going to watch us later during the replay. And do join us in this journey to create this opportunity through, several interventions to create the world that we believe we can, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, remember that even the richest investor in this world say that investing in yourself is the best investment you can ever make in yourself. So with that, we would like to leave everyone with this quote from Dolly Parton: if your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you so much, David, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Marilyn. Have yourself a great night.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Stay safe, everyone. Bye for now.